November 5th, 1975, in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona, a young 22-year-old Travis Walton was driving home with 6 of his co-workers through the forest after a day of logging. They had worked late and the sun had already set, and it was getting dark. They were driving along through the woods to get home when they saw a bright light through the trees, which at first they thought might be a plane crash. They continued on and came round a corner, where they came face to face with what seemed to be a flying saucer in a clearing in the trees. Travis Walton jumped out of the pickup truck and ran towards the craft. He got as close as he could and then ducked down behind a pile of logs as the craft started to make a humming sound. The 6 men in the truck were screaming at him to get back, and as he jumped up to turn around to run, a beam of light from the ship hit him and he flew into the air and landed on the floor. In panic, the guys in the truck took off down the road and left him. Travis was missing for 5 days, and in that time, the police did search party rescues through the forest. The accusation at the time was that his colleagues may have murdered him and buried him in the forest. But 5 days later, the phone rang and Travis was back. We'll go through what Travis experienced. When he regained consciousness, he found himself with a kind of blurry vision, not sure what's going on, laying flat on a table. There was an object floating above his chest area, which seemed to be emanating a soft green glow. As his focus came into vision, he saw 3 short beings surrounding him around the table. The beings looked similar to the stereotypical grey aliens. They were all wearing orangey red coveralls. He managed to push one of them away and collapse off the table, not quite full control of his body. He grabbed a nearby object, which he described as a cylindrical kind of glass tubing, and he threatened them, waving at them, screaming. The beings had a face-off with him, with direct eye contact, holding their hands up like this. And at the moment that Travis thought, I'm going to run at them and barge at them to get through the door, the beings turned around, walked away, turning right down the corridor. Travis then quickly turned left and went the other way around. He found a room that he wasn't sure if anyone was in, so he walked around the corner edge of the wall because he saw a chair in the middle of the room. As he got to the chair, he describes that the walls and the floor became transparent and he could see points of light everywhere, like he was looking at stars in space. He describes the chair having control panels like coloured buttons on the armrest. Travis feels a sensation that he is no longer alone in the room. He turns around to see a strong male standing in the doorway. He's wearing all blue and has a glass helmet over his head. Travis then moves towards him, thinking that he's here to rescue him. Without any kind of communication, the man strongly takes him by the arm and walks him down a corridor. He is then led down a ramp into a very large open hangar in which a couple of flying saucers, chrome, shiny, metallic, are parked on the floor. He is led across the hallway, down a small corridor and into a room. There is a man and a woman in the room waiting for him. They are very beautiful people, but very strong. Travis tries to resist, but the beings are much stronger than him. They place him on the table with ease, the woman placing a mask over his nose, to which Travis then loses consciousness. Five days later, he wakes up thinking it's the same night. He sees the craft above him shoot off into space, And that's the end of his story. That's his experience. All 6 crew members took a polygraph test. 5 of them passed, and 1 of them was inconclusive. And this man was said to not want to cooperate with the law and had had trouble with the police in the past. He was just not cooperative, and it made the results inconclusive. Later on, he did retake the test again and actually then cooperated and passed also. When Travis returned, they did want to do a polygraph test on him, but he was in no state to do it because of his post-traumatic stress. His brother basically handled the situation and said no, he's not taking it right now. But sometime later, he did take a polygraph test and pass as well, along with his brother, who also passed. However, years later, Travis took part in a game show in which the cash prize was $100,000 if you were telling the truth in your kind of crazy story. Travis did this on television as part of the game show.
Let's continue. You've answered 14 truthful. If you answer the next question truthfully, it's $100,000. Now, regardless of what happens, you have $25,000 for your time here. I thank you again for sharing your story with us. This is a $100,000 moment of truth, and that's not going to be an easy softball of a question. If you decide to stop right now, then it's left for our audience to make the decision based on what they know of you, Travis, if your story is true or not. If you want to stop now, I certainly would understand. If you'd like to answer this question, I'll be happy to indulge you. What do you think here, guys?
I think you should do it.
Even if it should come up and the answer be something you don't expect it to be.
It's scary. I mean, he's putting his reputation on the line, you know. But his story has been the same, and if it comes down to this is his time. I think he should do it.
Dana?
I think you should do it.
Celeste?
Yes.
Okay.
Question 15. Were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975?
The moment of truth will continue.
This is the moment of truth.
What happened on November 5th, 1975? Well, Travis Walton has told us a detailed account. You can read his book. What is the title of the book?
Fire in the Sky.
Fire in the Sky. Also a movie based on his story, and basically he says he was driving with 6 crew members from a day of work where they saw a flying saucer, and he jumped out of the truck, and the next thing was witnessed by Ken and others that a beam of energy or light hit you, and you believe that you were abducted, and Ken believes that you were abducted by aliens for that period of time. So we asked that question. Question 15 is simply this. Were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975?
Yes.
That answer is false.
Well, Travis, I told you at the very beginning of this show that I'm not a skeptic. And so I try not to judge or root one way or the other, but I was really hoping that this answer was a true answer. All I will say to you is that when asked this while strapped to the polygraph machine, it was deduced that your response was conclusively deceptive. Sadly, I'll say that the $100,000 you stood to win by answering truthfully is not yours, but I will happily say that by having the courage to face us and be here and answer these questions, 14 of which you answered truthfully, we have $25,000 for you. Is there...
I'm going to outline some of the reasons that skeptics and debunkers use to say that this whole case is a fabrication and a hoax. The leading theory being that the logging crew were behind on their contract and wanted to somehow get out of the contract, and so they staged this event as an elaborate hoax to try and get out of the contract. However, that just didn't work. You can't get out of a contract that way, and it actually did more harm than good to the logging crew and to the boss, Mike Rogers. So that alone doesn't really have much to it, doesn't have much credence. Another theory that the debunkers use is that there is a 70-foot gantry tower in the woods, and that Travis somehow kind of fabricated it to look like a flying saucer decorated with lights, and used some kind of accomplice to hide in the gantry tower to shine a beam of light on him, to which Travis would then act and jump backwards himself and land on the floor as a kind of practical joke.
When you hit the ground, you went funk, and
Lamp, huh?
yeah, you went, you bounced, and then you hit the ground.
When I finally came to rest, was I face up or face down?
He was like this.
Dead man, huh?
Yeah. We saw something go across the sky.
Yeah.
So we thought it was gone.
Yeah, so
we were more worried about coming back and seeing you lying there dead.
Charcoal, huh?
Yes, there'd be nothing left of you, and that was our biggest fear.
However, when we listen to the testimony of the men that witnessed the event, the boss Mike Rogers described the craft only being about 15 to 25 foot from the ground, which is about 3 times lower than the height of the gantry tower.
This thing was setting about 15 and 25 feet off the ground. It had some kind of a round thing on top like a dome. Basically, it was just very, very sleek.
If we take a look at the Wikipedia page on the Travis Walton case, it immediately titles the story as a hoax. It also suggests that most people believe it's a hoax, which I actually don't think is true. The Wikipedia page points out that Travis was a well-known hoaxer, playing multiple practical jokes on people in the town, but when we listen to his brother, he claims that he never made a practical joke in his adult life.
Obviously, Dwayne, you know your own brother probably better than anybody else. Do you believe the story?
I've never seen him play a practical joke in his adult life.
There was a Majestic 12 document that was leaked, which handles what to do in situations of exactly this: public encounters with UFOs and aliens, and what should the government do about it. In it is a detailed description of how to handle the press. In this document, it reads about how they should discredit witnesses by essentially any means possible. Discredit witnesses. If at all possible, witnesses will be held incommunicado until the event of their knowledge and involvement can be determined. Witnesses will be discouraged from talking about what they have seen, and intimidation may be necessary to ensure their cooperation. If witnesses have already contacted the press, it will be necessary to discredit their stories. This can be done by the assertion that they have either misinterpreted natural events, or the victims of hysteria or hallucinations, or the perpetrators of hoaxes. Philip Klass, who was heavily associated with the national security agencies like the CIA, offered the youngest member of the crew, Steve Pierce, $10,000 to say publicly that the event was a hoax.
Philip Klass, when he offered me the $10,000, that was a lot of money back in the 70s.
Steve Pierce, who was the youngest member of the work crew that Travis Walton was on, stated that Philip Klass offered him $10,000 in order to say that this was a hoax.
$10,000 is a nice amount of money today. In 1980, that was a really nice chunk of money.
40 years later, members of the crew still stand behind Travis to say that he is an honest man, and the account really did happen.
We took off in that truck. I can't tell you. I wasn't there. I don't know. But I believe every word Travis said about it. I don't have any doubt in my mind, because like I say, he's never lied to me about nothing.
Many years later, a study was done on the trees in the area that the craft was seen and the location that Travis disappeared. They went back to study the ring growth of the trees and found remarkable results.
These trees were producing wood fiber at 30-something times the rate they had in the previous 85 years. Other trees exhibited the same kind of changes, and the effect diminished the farther you got from that spot.
Not only was there an extreme growth rate to some of these trees around the clearing, but it seems that there's also a directionality to them.
I started checking stumps at the four corners of the compass and discovered that there was a swelling and a thickening of the growth rings in the direction that the craft had been and not on its opposite side. That was where the thickness of the rings were at the minimum.
Travis and some of the original people who did the first surveys had posited that possibly the cell growth was caused by radiation. I took that a step further and did some digging to see if there's been any academic studies done on radiation and tree growth, and I found at least one or two related to the Chernobyl incident. A university out of Poland did a study in 1997 that found trees that were exposed to radiation after Chernobyl had grown up to 3 times in volume of accelerated growth as compared to previous years. Our field survey and finding this directionality and possible connection to radiation opened a whole lot of new doors that need to be explored.
Travis's story has a lot of similarities to an experience of a woman in 1954 in Staffordshire, England, who experienced essentially the same beings.
It was stationary, this thing, and it was bright silver in colour, and it had a dome. It was tilted to sort of, I could see the occupants in it.
You saw people in it?
I saw people in it. There were 2 people in there. These people were beautiful people. That's the only way I can describe them. They had long golden hair, like a page boy bob, just like the old kings. You used to see photographs of the old kings. And the colour of the hair was golden. Now, I was really...
What were they dressed in?
They had a sort of a polo neck jumper affair, like a ski top suit, in pale blue.
Debunkers would say that Travis merely read the story and integrated it into his own. However, you could equally say that if both are telling the truth, they're simply experiencing the same kind of beings. One discrepancy that I can see is that Travis describes a control panel on the chair with buttons and knobs on the chair, physical controls. However, when we listen to people like Bob Lazar, who was physically inside a craft back engineering it, he describes absolutely no controls, no buttons, no joysticks, nothing. And that the craft itself is maneuvered through thought, it's through psychic connection. There is no physical buttons. Is that the same for all UFOs or all craft? We don't know, so we can't really rule it out. But it is a discrepancy to the kind of craft that Lazar explained. Whether you believe Travis or not, it remains, 40 years later, one of the most remarkable cases documented. It has several witnesses, past polygraph tests, proof of radiation in tree growth. It has rigorously been tried to be debunked, and yet the original crew stand behind Travis even 40 years later. If it is a hoax, it is extremely well done, and if it is true, it is absolutely remarkable. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I will see you again with another. Goodbye.
Obviously, the ET craft do exist. Something had to build them, so there must be aliens. And since there are and the craft are there must be some sort of factory and an entire civilization somewhere.